One day, a young man named Ananda met a monk and introduced himself. "Welcome, Ananda," Bhikkhu Samudra said. "What brings you here, my child?" "Venerable Bhikkhu," Ananda began, "I am troubled by negative thoughts that I cannot seem to escape. Despite my best efforts to live a good life, I am constantly plagued by doubt, fear, and anger. I do not know how to free myself from this suffering." Bhikkhu Samudra listened patiently, nodding slowly as Ananda spoke. When the young man finished, the monk remained silent for a moment, as if contemplating his response. "Ananda," Bhikkhu Samudra finally said, "the mind is like a garden. It can grow flowers or it can grow weeds. Whichever we cultivate is what will flourish. Negative thoughts are like weeds. They will take over if left unchecked. But we can learn to tend to our mind and cultivate the thoughts that lead to peace and happiness." Ananda looked at the monk, his expression a mix of hope and confusion. "But how, Venerable Bhikkhu? How do I tend to my mind and rid it of these negative thoughts?" Bhikkhu Samudra smiled gently. "Come, let me tell you a story. There was once a young prince, not unlike yourself, who was also plagued by negative thoughts. This prince was wise and kind, but his mind was a battlefield where doubt, fear, and anger often waged war. Seeking peace, he left his palace and journeyed to a distant land, hoping to find a way to conquer his inner demons. After many months of wandering, he came across an ancient temple high in the mountains. The temple was home to a sage known for his wisdom and tranquility. The prince, desperate for guidance, approached the sage and poured out his troubles. The sage listened carefully and then handed the prince a small, intricately carved box. "This box contains the key to your peace," the sage said. "Take it with you, and whenever a negative thought arises, open the box." The prince was puzzled but accepted the box and left the temple. As he continued his journey, a negative thought soon crept into his mind. Remembering the sage's words, he opened the box. To his surprise, the box was empty, but as he looked inside, his negative thought seemed to lose its power and dissipated. Each time a negative thought arose, the prince opened the box, and each time the thought vanished. Over time, the prince realized that the act of opening the box made him pause and observe his thoughts rather than being consumed by them. He learned to see his thoughts for what they were, impermanent and insubstantial. Bhikkhu Samudra paused and looked at Ananda. "The key to overcoming negative thoughts, Ananda, is mindfulness. When we become aware of our thoughts without judgment, we take away their power. They come and go like clouds in the sky, and we remain the sky, vast and unaffected." Ananda nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "But Venerable Bhikkhu, how do I practice this mindfulness in my daily life?" Bhikkhu Samudra smiled. "Begin with your breath. Sit quietly each day and focus on your breathing. When a negative thought arises, acknowledge it without judgment and return to your breath. Over time, you will cultivate a mind that is calm and clear, like a still lake reflecting the moon." Ananda thanked Bhikkhu Samudra and returned to the village with a newfound sense of purpose. Each day, he set aside time to sit quietly and focus on his breath. At first, it was challenging, and his mind wandered constantly. But he remembered the story of the prince in the box, and he persisted. Slowly, Ananda began to notice a change. His negative thoughts lost their grip on him. He learned to observe them without being swept away by them. He found that he could face his fears and doubts with a calm mind and a compassionate heart. One day, as Ananda was meditating by the river, he realized that the storm within him had quieted. The negative thoughts still arose from time to time, but they no longer held the same power. He had learned to see them for what they were, temporary and insubstantial. Ananda returned to the temple to thank Bhikkhu Samudra. The monk greeted him with a warm smile. "You have done well, Ananda," he said. "Remember, mindfulness is a lifelong practice. Continue to tend to your mind as you would a garden, and you will cultivate a life of peace and joy." As Ananda walked back to the village, he felt a lightness in his step, as if a great burden had been lifted. The lessons he had learned from Bhikkhu Samudra were more than just techniques. They were a new way of seeing and experiencing life. He resolved to integrate mindfulness into every aspect of his daily routine, believing that this would help him maintain the inner peace he had started to cultivate. Each morning, Ananda rose with the sun and began his day with a period of meditation, focusing on his breath and allowing his mind to settle. He found that starting his day in this way helped him approach his tasks with a clear and calm mind. Whether he was working in the fields, repairing his neighbors' homes, or simply engaging in conversation, Ananda practiced being fully present, attentive to each moment as it unfolded. At first, Ananda's efforts were met with mixed results. There were days when his mind was like a stormy sea, and it took all his willpower to remain mindful. On other days, his thoughts flowed like a gentle stream, and he felt a deep sense of connection with everything around him. Through it all, Ananda reminded himself that mindfulness was a practice, not a destination. He learned to be patient and kind to himself, understanding that true transformation takes time. One day, as Ananda was working in the village square, he noticed a young woman named Kamala sitting alone under a tree, her face etched with worry. Kamala was known for her bright spirit, but lately she had seemed withdrawn and troubled. Ananda approached her with a gentle smile. "Kamala, are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. Kamala looked up, surprised by the kindness in Ananda's eyes. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. I've been struggling with many worries, Ananda. My father is ill, and I don't know how to help him. I feel so helpless and afraid." Ananda sat down beside her, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "I understand how you feel, Kamala. It's natural to be worried about those we love. But sometimes our worries can become overwhelming and cloud our judgment. May I share something that has helped me?" Kamala nodded, eager for any advice that might ease her burden. "Whenever I feel overwhelmed by my thoughts," Ananda began, "I practice mindfulness. I focus on my breath and observe my thoughts without judgment. This helps me create a space between my thoughts and my reactions. It doesn't solve all my problems, but it helps me face them with a clearer mind and a calmer heart." Kamala listened intently, her eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope. "Do you think this could help me too?" "I believe it could," Ananda replied. "Would you like me to show you how to practice mindfulness?" Kamala agreed, and Ananda guided her through a simple meditation, focusing on her breath and gently letting go of her worries. As they sat together in silence, Kamala began to feel a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in weeks, her mind felt calm and her heart lighter. Over the next few weeks, Kamala joined Ananda in his daily mindfulness practice. She found that it not only helped her manage her worries, but also brought her a deeper sense of connection to herself and her surroundings. She learned to approach her father's illness with a compassionate heart, doing what she could to help while accepting the things beyond her control. As Kamala's inner peace grew, she shared the practice with her family, who also found solace in mindfulness. Ananda's example and guidance had sparked a ripple effect, spreading calm and clarity throughout the village. Inspired by the positive changes he saw in Kamala and her family, Ananda decided to start a mindfulness group in the village. He invited anyone who was interested to join him for regular meditation sessions and discussions on mindfulness. The group quickly grew, attracting people of all ages who were eager to learn how to manage their thoughts and emotions more skillfully. In their gatherings, Ananda shared stories from his own journey and the teachings of Bhikkhu Samudra. He encouraged everyone to support one another and to approach their practice with patience and compassion. The village, once plagued by the silent struggles of its inhabitants, began to transform into a community of mutual support and understanding. One evening, as the mindfulness group gathered by the river for their meditation, Bhikkhu Samudra made a surprise visit. The monk had heard of the positive changes in the village and came to offer his blessings and further guidance. "Ananda," Bhikkhu Samudra said with a warm smile, "you have done well in sharing the practice of mindfulness with your community. Remember, mindfulness is not just about sitting in meditation. It is about bringing awareness to every aspect of our lives, from the way we speak to the way we treat others.